I have a hard time with 9 to 5. I like to work when work needs to be done and play all the rest of the time.
Welcome to the Work Undone podcast, a show where I sit down with maker entrepreneurs to find out what it really takes to start a business focused on physical product from the folks who are actually in the thick of it. I'm your host, Justin Hawkins, a designer, artist, entrepreneur living in lovely Portland, Oregon. Before we get started here, I just want to let everybody know there's going to be a bit of background noise. I'm recording in my work studio space, and this train that goes by likes to make itself known, and I've got some neighbors who are makers, and they'll be banging around a little bit.
Here on episode 4, I sit down with Joe Mansfield. He's an entrepreneur and maker who has started several businesses, the first of which was a company utilizing laser technology that would engrave logos and different artwork on leather and wood surfaces. And the second business was a company that created iPhone cases, both bamboo and hardwoods later. And most recently, he has started a company called Pacific and West that is creating notepads with a beautiful maple ply cover. I think that's everything I need to tell you to catch you up. So enjoy episode 4.
Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know we've known each other for quite a while now, probably 6 or 7 years. When did you start?
Yeah.
Where did you move into the town storage building?
Good old town storage. Probably, I think it was 2010, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
wow.
It's been a while. Yeah, I know. Well, I've watched you go through the whole process of starting something and then starting something else and then expanding into the whole thing. But I always start out with maybe tell me about your history of entrepreneurship. Do you have a lot of that examples of that when you were growing up?
Yeah, I grew up in Astoria, and my parents started their own company there. It was a medical equipment company, and so I grew up in the office when I was as far back as I can remember, 2 years old. Just in the thick of it. I was the delivery boy with
awesome.
my dad. So
that's great.
And then what really I think inspired me to start making product is my grandpa. He used to make wooden toys and puzzles and all kinds of sculptures. He was really into mixed media, cutting stone and experimenting with epoxies and just all kinds of wild stuff. So, and then
is that stuff that he would sell then too, or is he just making it for himself? Or
he just made it for himself and friends. And actually, one of his first businesses was a wooden box company, and he was making wood boxes for the army, way back in the day. So, and then he did it all. He sold Buicks and
sure
had a medical equipment company, and but yeah, so he was a huge inspiration. And then my uncle showed me how manufacturing in the U.S. could be possible. He started a backpack company a couple decades ago in Chico, California, called Overland Equipment.
Nice.
And had around 50 employees at his peak before he sold out to Horny Toad.
Oh, cool. Right on.
Yeah.
That's great. So it sounds like a lot of examples of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, totally. It was sort of like there's no other option, really, after growing up in that family.
Right. So tell us about your other businesses that you started.
Yeah, so it all started about 6 months out of college. I moved to Portland, worked for a sign shop for about 6 months, and then had the idea to laser engrave laptops and iPods. And so bought a laser and just had it in my tiny studio apartment, which had no furniture. It was just a laser and an inflatable mattress.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
do you have any photos of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty hilarious. But yeah, just started experimenting with all kinds of materials, and I think the big breakthrough was I curated an artist series of moleskin notebooks where laser engraved on the notebooks, and people sort of just discovered it online and started asking for more. And so that was kind of my first business. And then I had the idea to engrave iPhone cases, and no one was making wood iPhone cases at the time, so figured why not.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you're saying that was engrave was when you did the moleskin thing?
Yeah.
And then that grew, and you guys you were doing it out of your garage, right? At some point you had a house and you were doing your garage.
Totally. I found a 5-bedroom house for $900 a month. And which still exists. The rent went up $30, I think, last year. But
whoa,
most of the original roommates still live there because it's impossibly cheap.
That's amazing.
But yeah, had the laser in a bedroom.
And, it was in the bedroom. It wasn't in the garage?
Yeah, it was in the bedroom.
Oh, wow.
And then one of my roommates was like my first employee. So. Yeah.
And then you finally got the studio at the town storage.
At
building,
town
right?
storage, yeah.
And where we met.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, I started Grove Made with Ken Tomita, who was a neighbor right across the street from my house.
Oh, that's right. His shop was across the street. That's right. Right.
And he was building furniture at the time. So
yeah. So what brought on the idea? Just like that nobody was doing it. Like the whole it started out as bamboo. So you guys were kind of starting out with the whole like sustainable wood product. Yeah.
Exactly. It was right when the iPhone 1 came out, and I was a huge Mac nerd at the time, and was like, thought that an artist series of cases would be pretty incredible, and no one was doing it at the time, so it was really impossibly difficult to make a case out of bamboo. It's like probably the worst material.
Yeah, you guys had a lot of problems, I remember. A lot of trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
Being next door, I would pop over occasionally. Well, and I think Ken did that talk at Ziba at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think he was explaining all the work you guys had put into it, trying to figure out how to CNC the two pieces and have them fit and all that sort of stuff. So eventually, you guys, you still were doing the bamboo for quite a while, and then you moved towards doing more hardwoods, or what? How did that shape up?
Yeah, so we realized that domestic hardwoods were actually a lot more appropriate for the cases because they're not as prone to cracking as bamboo is. Plus, it's domestic, so it's a lot easier to get. You don't have to put it on a boat from China. And it just looks a lot better.
How long did it take you guys to realize that?
Probably about 2 years.
2 years. Wow. That's a hard 2 years.
Yeah, it was.
And in the midst of that, you guys were expanding and trying to keep up, because every time I talk to you, you're like, yeah, we're behind again. Like, we've got too many orders, like, which is a great problem to have, but it's a problem nonetheless.
Yeah. We were 6 months behind at one point after we got featured on Gizmodo and Uncrate. That was our first breakthrough, the iPhone 4 case.
Mm-hmm.
I made a Photoshop mock-up before we even had a product and launched it the same day Steve Jobs announced the iPhone 4.
Whoa.
And I don't know if you remember, but the iPhone 4 had the antenna gate problem, which our case solved, and also the glass was breaking like crazy. So people really wanted protection.
Yeah.
And ours was the first to the market.
Wow.
And that was like the big benefit of being a small company and doing all the manufacturing in-house.
Yeah. So just before I forget, I wanted, one of the big things is this whole prototyping thing and coming up with a product and figuring that out. And I know you guys had a lot of issues with that. Can you describe, like, did you hired a consultant, I think you said, to do the 3D stuff, and then you were doing CNC testing and trying to make it work? What were your bigger hurdles there?
Yeah, so we had 2 vertical CNC mills in house, which were awesome for prototyping and production. And the problem was we were so far behind with orders that we didn't have much time to prototype and improve our product and try new ideas for probably a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And so it was a painful process. balancing production with just improving the product. Yeah.
So what did you do before you had this in-house CNCs though? Were you were outsourcing it and working with a third party?
Yeah, one of my friends who owns a industrial design firm in town called TerraZine was generous enough to let us use his CNC router for free. And
wow.
So that was a huge help the first few months.
Free iPhone cases for life.
Yeah.
For that guy. That's cool.
He's a godfather, yeah.
Yeah, nice. And so you guys, how long were you in the town storage building? Like 4 years?
Yeah, it was, let's see, we moved out in 2013.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was just about 4 years.
Okay. And you guys expanded, you took over, so you started the one space next door to the agency I was working at, and you expanded 3 over, like you took over 3 more spaces, right?
Yeah.
And then the downstairs as well, right? It's like this huge production, 3 floors in between you two, 2 spaces, people running up and down the stairs all the time. How many employees did you guys have at that point?
Yeah, so, yeah, we started with just Ken and I, and then it grew pretty rapidly to around 12 employees. And then, yeah, we just started knocking down walls in town storage. And, man, those stairs. We had a basement space with the CNC mills, and then the 5th floor space with the laser shop, and 99 stairs. I counted them every day. But yeah, we grew to 25 employees in that space.
Wow. And then you guys finally found a building, and you moved into and kind of built that out and made it your own, right? Not too far away.
Yeah, totally. I was a friend of mine who worked for the PDC at the time told me just not to mess around with commercial realtors and just to start knocking on doors. And so I found this rundown building on 9th and Stark and just tracked down the owner through Portland Maps and called him at least a dozen times before he remembered my name because he's like 97 years old. And,
was it just sitting empty?
It had a guy who was had a grow shop, but it wasn't doing much. He was at least 3 months late on rent. So yeah, we took it over, and that's been great, and that's where Grove's at still.
Yeah.
But
cool. So explain this new business of yours for us.
Yeah. So after
new old business,
right? The rebirth.
Yeah. Right.
After being in business with Ken for 6 years, I decided to branch off and start my own thing where I could have a little more flexibility to pursue ideas I wanted to, and just launched Pacific and West this month on Kickstarter, and the campaign finished yesterday. So, and we got funded. So
that's awesome.
That's exciting and a good foundation for building this new brand.
Cool. And so you started, you kind of relaunched Engrave, right? Was that the idea?
Yeah.
And doing these custom art design engraved products?
Yeah, exactly. So I started Engrave probably 8 years ago, and it's just kind of grown in the background with no love. It's like the unloved child. Mm-hmm. And
so it did exist this whole time, like with Grove, which is kind of like back burner?
It did. And it was a big distraction for Grove because the sales would always ramp up during the same holiday period.
Oh, yeah.
And so we actually brought the Engrave, the corporate side of the business, into Grove for a while.
Got it.
And just recently we decided to bring it back out. And I took one of the key employees, one of the original employees, with me, who helps run Engrave now.
Yeah. Cool. So it's just you two?
Yeah, it's just the two of us.
That's great. So you're doing kind of custom engraved products, and then you started a product line, or is it a separate brand, or how are you guys slicing that up?
Yeah. So Engrave is business to business. It's mostly custom wood and leather products for companies and teams, and it's basically promotional products, but really high-end, U.S. made,
Right.
Super customized, unlike most of the Chinese crap that's out there.
Right. So this is a lot of like Nike, and I think I saw Levi's on your site. They'll come to you and they'll be like, okay, so we're doing employee event, and we're doing a new launch of this product, and we want to do this engrave on these, sketchbooks and give them out to our employees at the thing, right?
Exactly.
Like yeah.
Yeah. Our key product is a leather cover for a moleskin notebook.
Oh.
And
So it's just reusable. You just put the like little trapper keeper binder thing. You just put the moleskin inside.
Totally.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got
And it just gets better and better with age.
Oh yeah. Right.
Yeah. Lasts forever.
Totally.
And so that made me think, why am I using another company's notebook when I should be making my own in the U.S.? Most notebooks are made in overseas and use artificial leather for the covers, and I thought there had to be a better way. So that's the new company, Pacific and West, and that's really geared towards creating a line of notebooks and stationery goods for consumers. It's a direct to customer brand. So
cool. And so explain the first product for us.
Yeah. The first product is a walnut and brass notebook, and it's comes in 3 different sizes, and I designed custom paper, which is really low contrast. So your thoughts dominate the page, not the lines.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a dot grid.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. So while I'm thinking about it here, and you mentioned these utilizing other people's products, where are you getting the leather goods or you're engraving on?
Yeah, so I design all the leather goods in house.
Oh wow!
So I prototype them with the laser, and then I have an industrial sewing machine right next to it, and we do all the photography and all the design work in house still. And but as far as production, we work with a local leather job shop called Spooltown.
Oh yeah, great.
Which is much more set up for volume production.
Yeah, totally. That's great. I didn't realize that all that was done. I wouldn't put it past you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not surprised by any means. I know that's something you're super passionate about. So what are some of the sacrifices or trade-offs that you feel like you've made over the years starting these businesses and continuing to run them, and then deciding to run and do it again, do it all over?
Yeah. Just lots of personal sacrifices. I mean, in the early days of Grove, I just did not have time outside of Grove for
Mm-hmm.
friends or relationships, which really sucked.
Yeah.
But that got a lot better over time. And one of the reasons I went into business for myself is so I could have flexibility and control over my own schedule in life. And that's one of the reasons I recently moved on from Grove, because as businesses grow, they become more regimented, and it's really important to set a good example for all your employees and show up to work on time and do the 9 to 5 and
all the little things.
Yeah, and so I have a hard time with 9 to 5. I like to work when work needs to be done, and play all the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So.
And so did you guys parted ways, so you're not a part of Grove at all? Like, you guys separated both companies, and Ken's running Grove and you're doing the new thing?
Yeah, so Ken bought my shares of Grove recently, and I'm now running Engrave in Pacific and West. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and we're still friends, so it's all good. And my new studio is a block away.
Yeah, you guys are super close.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned playing, and I know, and you mentioned how much time you were spending the first few years at Grove, but I seem to recall you took a nice long trip.
Yeah, that's true.
Tell us about that. What was it? Remind me what that was again.
Yeah, so after 5 years of slaving away, I decided to take a little sabbatical from Grove, and Ken was cool with it, and so I took off on a motorcycle tour with my dad, just over to Yellowstone, and just had a blast with that, and then fit in a 2-week-long bike tour in Orcas Island.
Oh, nice.
And then hiked 2 weeks on the PCT with a couple high school buddies.
No way.
So it was like very multimodal. Like
You got it all in there.
Yeah.
That's great. Good for you, man. That's awesome. I know that's super hard to do when you just, just where do you find the time? But I guess when you hit a wall, maybe. Is what triggered that? Where did you get to the place where you're like, okay, I got to do something for myself?
I guess like Ken and I had a really great synergy for most of our partnership, but then eventually our roles started to overlap, and it started to feel like I was less necessary, and so I decided to go on a long trip and have time to think, and it was really, really key for deciding the next step, which before the trip I assumed I was just going to go back to Grove, but after the sabbatical I decided I couldn't go back and I wanted to start my own thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, that worked out.
yeah.
So when you started this whole thing, a lot of some of the barriers that people have when they're starting a new thing is money. Did you have any savings, or did you get a loan, or those laser things aren't cheap. Did you have some help?
Yeah. So, my grandparents actually passed away, right before I, started my business, and, left me, just enough money to buy the smallest laser like I could find.
Wow. It's
kind of a piece of crap, but
got the job done.
Yeah, and then I just bootstrapped it from there.
Yeah.
And Grove was 100% self-funded.
Did you guys do any Kickstarter projects? I can't remember how that worked out.
No, we were before Kickstarter existed.
Okay.
So
so this is your first this new project is your first Kickstarter?
Yeah, the Wood Notebooks on Pacific and West that was my first Kickstarter, and oh man, it's so much less risk, and it's just so nice to have that validation before you start producing products in mass.
Yeah. It's a proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
You just like pre-selling everything. It's like, yeah, that's amazing.
It makes so much sense. If you don't, Grove's had a few times where we've definitely nailed products, and other times we speculate about new categories and it doesn't always work out. And so Kickstarter is kind of nice in that way.
Yeah. Was it hard? Was Kickstarter a pain in the butt to do?
Making the video was the hardest part, but I love shooting video and editing video, so it was a fun challenge. And it was a good excuse to pull out the time-lapse slider and just play around with that for a couple weeks. Yeah.
Nice.
And the cool thing about it is it really forces you to ask questions about your product and new brand, and explain those really concisely,
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Cool. That's one of the next things I really look forward to learning is just all the ins and outs of Kickstarter and how to get that going. So
there's a lot of experts in Portland. Portland's has the highest number of Kickstarters per capita of
really,
I think, any city.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
And when I reached out to them, they were just amazing.
Oh wow, that's great.
Like Casey from Elevation Dock, who had the $1 million iPhone dock Kickstarter.
Yeah. Wow.
He had a lot of great advice, and countless others helped out. So
sweet. What do you feel like's been the hardest part, you think, of starting your own business and business focused around making physical product?
Yeah, the hardest part is making the product. Which Grove was very vertically integrated and still is.
What does that mean?
They make almost every part of the products.
Got it. Okay.
Do all the photography and fulfillment and customer service, every aspect of the business.
End to end, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And my new business is a little more focused on the product design and just the overall marketing. And I'm having other more qualified shops do the production of the products.
Locally outsourcing.
Yeah, locally, yeah. And so that's a big shift. And it allows it allows me to be a little more nimble and have fewer employees.
Yeah, that's great. What do you? I know you just launched the Kickstarter. What do you feel like you're up? What are you learning next, or what do you want to learn next about the business or for yourself?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Well, I'm designing a pen right now, and I'm really excited about that. So
There's probably a learning curve on that.
yeah, so I'm learning a lot about CNC lathing, which I've never had to design for.
Wow.
And so I'm dabbling in Rhino and just teaching myself 3D modeling and how to communicate with CNC lathing shops.
Oh yeah. Is there some good ones here in town? Have you found some good ones here in town?
Yeah, there's some great ones.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I'm always fascinated to hear about how many resources we have here locally in Portland. It's really exciting, especially talking with Kelly. She's like, just rattle stuff off, and I'm like, what? No, yeah, it's just down the street. Da, da, da.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, especially inner southeast.
Yeah,
it's changing fast though, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. So it sounds like you're interested in keeping things pretty small, but with this new company, do you have an idea of like what the next 5 years looks like? What the company will look like in 5 years?
Yeah, I haven't thought out 5 years. I've definitely thought like a year out and 3 years out, but and that's always good with a business to have a plan, like a long-term plan. I should probably get on that, but
there's so many other things you got probably on your plate right now. So
yeah, I would just like to design a full line of notebook and stationery goods.
Yeah,
with this new brand, and be able to experiment and collaborate with other creatives a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it seems like that was your interest from the beginning when you started Engrave, was you loved working with artists and taking their work and transferring and applying it to, engraving it on wood or leather or whatever.
Yeah. I can definitely see more collaborations in the future.
Yeah. Do another Moleskine show or another art show on your new book?
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah. Nice. What am I missing here? Oh, well, I guess the big question is, has it been worth it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been so challenging.
Yeah.
And it's just full of constant improvement. And there's been a lot of great learning experiences from working with employees and working with vendors and just having a overview of the whole business instead of just being an employee specializing in one certain task. So yeah, I would definitely do it again, and I am.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
So, and I think it sounds like what you're learning from your previous experience is just keep it small, keep it simple, and outsource locally.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain people who love leading large teams, and that's not really in my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And production is all consuming, and if you want to be good at a business can only be good at so many things, and you really have to decide, are you going to be a great production business, a great product design business, a great marketing business? It's really tough to do everything at a really high level, if not impossible.
Yeah.
So I'm deciding to outsource the production locally so I can focus on designing better products.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'd ask you about the percentage and what it looks like holiday, but you just kind of started this thing, and Grove was totally different. But is it kind of basically true where, you end up making 60% of your yearly kind of income from the holiday season?
With the business to business Engrave, we have a pretty steady business over the year because we have a lot of repeat clients that use our products for employee gifts or client gifts, and it's usually like project based, so they'll finish up a big project and celebrate with custom notebooks or
A memento for the
totally
all the hard work.
yeah.
So are you are you planning on traveling over, doing trade shows, doing retail shows? Is that something that you are going to be putting into this new business, and with Pacific and West, or is it just you're just kind of like, that's not worth it for me?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll probably end up doing a couple trade shows. I haven't figured out what, but I need to flesh out the product line a little bit first.
Right.
So that will probably be a year from now. And I haven't decided whether or not I'll focus on wholesale with this brand. Being able to sell direct to customers has a lot of advantages.
Margin.
Yeah, margin. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And just that direct relationship and feedback from the customer. But it's also hard to grow a direct business.
Yeah. Well, and since you are outsourcing it, I mean, how much limitation can you scale with your current production?
Yeah, and
house?
definitely. I'm working with vendors who can scale locally forever.
Great.
And that was always a challenge with Grove, is scaling to meet the demand during iPhone season, and then trying to employ all of those employees the rest of the year.
Oh, right. Yeah. I never thought about that. It's not necessarily the holiday season, it's iPhone season.
Yeah.
How often were they average coming out with new iPhones? Like, was it once every 2 years, once a year?
Yeah, the big form factors were every 2 years, and then they would do the
Smaller.
the S every year.
Right. Interesting. That sounds like a lot of work.
The constant march of progress with technology, right?
Yeah.
Will it ever end?
Yeah. Yeah, and all that stuff. So you guys would get how much lead time did you guys have before it actually launched? Because you would get from Apple the specs. So
zero specs, zero lead time.
Oh, really?
We were Apple's competitor because they make cases now.
Ah.
And we didn't sell in the Apple store, so we had no privileged information.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's what you're saying about the Photoshop mock-up that you did.
Yeah.
So then, like, it launched the same day, and then you would go buy one, and then get the specs and actually make it.
Yeah, we'd go wait in line with everyone else. Yeah.
Nice.
And then just scramble and work crazy hours.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. That's some hustle right there, man. That's some serious hustle. One of the things about Kickstarter that I'm always fascinated by, and, you had this problem when you were mentioning earlier when you first launched the company, where you're 6 months behind, right? So, and granted, you're outsourcing the production, but did you do a tiering system where it was like, okay, we can do 200 of these things that'll be delivered in March or whatever in 2 months, and then the next tier down is that? Did you kind of offset it like that?
No, we didn't, just because with paper goods and notebooks, it's all about large batches, and especially when you're using other vendors, it's much more cost effective to get large batches made. But
even with the cover being a maple, like, stained, it's like sealed and stained, and the whole like all the production of that is even with
we're actually laser cutting the walnut covers in house. That's
okay.
the one thing we're doing. We're really set up for that. That's our big expertise. So
God, I didn't realize that. That makes sense.
Yeah, but the actual printing of the paper and the die cutting of the paper and the binding, that's all going to happen out of house.
Right. So, but you guys will be assembling then?
No.
No? Okay.
No, we're working with a binding company.
Okay.
Who's assembling.
So then the brass binder, what's it called?
Yeah, it's called brass double coil.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the brass coil comes in, the printer comes in, the paper comes in, and then you guys cut it and drop it off at the bindery, and they put it together for you.
Yep.
Got it. So you're not just working with one vendor then. It's basically the printer, you guys, the brass coil company, and then the assembly, a bindery?
Yeah, and that's who supplies the coil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So they just order that directly and get that. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of that's a few moving parts.
Yeah, it is, and it's been tough to figure out the material. I worked with several different vendors to make a stable, thin walnut plywood.
Oh.
So it's actually a 3-ply.
Okay.
It's a walnut and then a core of poplar and then walnut on the inside too.
Okay.
And it's 16th inch thick, which not a lot of people make.
So you had a custom ply made for this product?
Yeah, I did originally. I had it made for the Grove iPad cases, and so it's kind of complicated.
Sure.
The vendor that was going to make the material for my notebooks fell through, and I ended up finding a random aircraft supply company who had it.
Had what?
Had a 16th inch walnut veneer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I know.
I love just finding the random stuff in places you never thought you'd find it.
Yep.
That's crazy.
It's like a needle in a haystack. I had no idea they were out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a pain. Like, you'd think there'd be a database for that.
Yeah, there's a great new production shop database called Maker's Row.
Oh, yeah.
It's a subscription based website.
I've taken a look at that a couple of times. It seems like they're growing and changing, and it's getting better.
Yeah.
What's been your experience?
It seems pretty dialed in.
Yeah.
I haven't used it too much just because after these years we kind of know the lay of the land in Portland as far as vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try and keep it as close as possible.
Yeah. That's one of the things I forgot to ask Kelly about was her resource listing or something like that. If she has some, I imagine she's got something written down or all that stuff.
I mean, that's like with running a making business, like that's super valuable is having quality vendors.
Yeah.
Who get back to you on time and
yeah, you can
give you reasonable prices.
And yeah, you can rely on. Yeah. Well, should we go through kind of a few like short answer questions?
Yeah, sure.
I probably know the answer to one of these already. What's your biggest time saver that you found over the years?
Oh man. One recent time saver has been TaskRabbit.
Oh, nice.
And it just hiring employees takes so much time. The interview process, just the training.
Yeah.
And then it's so much work that you need to keep them around. But TaskRabbit, it's just this super convenient short-term way to find employees, and they're all peer reviewed. So
yeah,
it kind of takes the work out of doing an interview, and you can call them in for as short as an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of success with TaskRabbit.
That's great.
On different projects.
I never would have thought to use it in that capacity. I use it with Church Key. It's like, oh, hey, could you go pick up these 10 cases of beer from the distributor and drop them off at my place because I don't have an hour to send traffic.
Yeah.
Or I actually hired a guy to help me move from town storage into this building for a day.
Awesome.
Which was great. It was really awesome. He was super nice guy. So where do you save your ideas? Notebooks or digital?
Let's see there.
I'm going to guess not digital.
Yeah. No, I have a fat stack of notebooks
bet.
that just have tons of ideas. And I mean, they're my journals too. So
yeah.
And I take a lot of time to look through them. I look through all of them once a year.
Really?
I go back through the archives. So
just get a bottle of whiskey and
yeah, it's like my New Year's ritual.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I've been meaning to do that myself. Just they sit in a box and it's like, you know what, I should really go through these. And
oh man, it's really entertaining.
Yeah, I bet.
Like your mind 10 years ago, it's like
totally
lots of laugh out loud moments.
Yeah, I bet. What's your favorite thing about your studio?
I really love kind of two things. I love the light. We have a big wall of glass, and we get southern exposure. Super great. And then I love the community. It's in a pretty cool building called The Plant, and there's several other design firms in the building, and we have a ping pong table outside. So
yeah,
it's really fun to cross paths with other creatives on the day to day. Yeah,
that building has some of the most amazing creative energy in it. Like, oh man, I'm very jealous of you having a spot in that space. It's awesome. So how long have you been at your current space, and then how many times have you moved, including Grove?
Whoa, yeah. I guess I've been at the current space a little over a year, and Grove has moved. Well, before Grove, I moved from a studio to a 5-bedroom house and then to town storage. And then Grove, we moved the machine shop from Ken's wood shop to
The basement.
town storage,
Right.
and then to the new building. And then I got my new studio, so it's
That's
like 5 times.
That's a lot of times.
Yeah, it's a lot of moving.
Yeah.
And mills aren't easy to move. They weigh like 8,000 pounds. So you got to like hire riggers.
Yeah. Yeah. How important is building your brand and telling your story?
Yeah, I don't really have a background in branding, but I've really enjoyed storytelling through video. I've always shot the videos for Grove, and with my new brand Pacific and West, I had a blast shooting the Kickstarter video, and I feel like that's a really engaging way to tell a story, especially for makers. There's a lot of fun visuals with the making process.
Yeah.
Compared to digital, where you just watch someone code, or I don't know.
Did you have somebody, you worked with somebody to design the new Pacific and West logo?
Actually, my employee Mike designed it.
Oh, yeah?
And we went back and forth and kind of refined it.
Nice.
Yeah.
All in-house, man. You're all about in-house.
Yeah, right?
So I know we talked about your trip that you took, but what is something you've done, selfish thing you've done for yourself, like self-ish, like something that's more focused on you and your own health?
I mean, I guess now that I have a little more flexibility with my new company, I just spend a lot more time running. I love running, and I do track workouts. I do hill sprints. I run Forest Park. And just spend a lot more time outdoors. I'm picking up mountain biking again, and that's been a lot of fun. So,
and you're still road biking?
Yeah, still road biking. Gonna start doing some off-road touring.
Nice.
This summer. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you knew then what you know now, would you have started this whole business, this whole laser
oh man
journey?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a blast. And I mean, if I knew what I know now, we wouldn't have made a lot of the mistakes we've made, but
would have been a little easier.
But that's all part of the process.
Sure.
So yeah, I would definitely do it all over again.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that. Well, thanks so much for stopping by and taking the time to sit down and chat, telling us your story and getting more in depth. It's been awesome.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to listen to all your podcasts.
Yeah, me too. Well, there you have it. An interesting story about how to start something and its ups and downs, and how to keep it going, and to focus on what's important for you and what makes sense for you and your life and your health, and pursuing that and making that happen. Joe has generously provided a coupon code for our listeners here. So if you'd like to get a Pacific and West notebook, go to their website and use the code WORKUNDONE, all one word with no spaces. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast. Also, check us out on Instagram at WorkUndone Podcast. And if you're interested, check out the website as well. We have photographs of all of the guests, as well as show notes, and you can subscribe there for the newsletter as well. As always, a big thanks to Needle Drop, a music licensing company here in Portland, Oregon, for providing the music for the show. If for some reason you haven't checked out all of the episodes that we have here, be sure to do that on either iTunes, or find the links at workundone.com.